depoliticize it, because it's not about that. If there is a chance to utilize these rights to create better conditions, and don't worry about the dues part of it, because you'll get to see the contract and do the math. If the dues are worth it, sign the contract, right? If they aren't, you don't have to sign for it. As long as the workers are on the same page. I mean, our union said that if we didn't want it after the first contract, they wouldn't even make us vote again. They would just walk away. So don't go to your managers for information about it.
Welcome to the Labor Solidarity Podcast, which is an Empathy Media Lab production highlighting the work of organizers and labor leaders. My name is Evan Papp, and I'm the executive producer of Empathy Media Lab, and we produce content on labor, political economy, art, and culture, and we're a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. Today, I'm speaking with Billy Jarboe, who is with the Apple Coalition of Organized Retail Employees, known as AppleCORE. And he also works at and helped organize an Apple store in Towson, Maryland, which became the first Apple store in the nation to unionize in June 2022. AppleCORE is part of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union. And Billy, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So could we begin by you introducing yourself, your background, and how you started working at this store?
Yeah. Well, my background pre-Apple was I was an athlete through at least half of college. And then I was at a spot where I was basically sort of injured, and I was kind of coming back from that. And I was like, do I try to finish out these last 2 years while playing baseball, which was my sport? Or, do I try to just basically get a job and move out and do that whole thing? And I had a friend I'm still friends with him, friend from high school that worked at Apple at the time. And basically in his situation used Apple to get himself going with his video stuff, and then ended up being able to do that. So that was really inspiring and cool. But he basically referred me. We had overlap for a couple of months before he ended up, doing his video stuff. But yeah, that when I got the job at Apple summer 2010, pretty much marked me stopping the baseball path and, starting the working path, while still trying to get out of finish school. So, yep. And then pretty much stayed there ever since.
Cool. And just for the audience to know, I was connected with you through my own friend, Juan, and he plays music with you. What band are you in?
Yep. Yeah. So we have a project called Samskara, which is pretty all over the place. It's very heavy but also kind of like psychedelic and improvisational and all this kind of stuff. And I play with my other buddy, Thomas, who I'm friends with since high school. And yeah, that was really cool. Over 2020, when we were on quarantine, me and Juan reconnected, and he had since picked up bass and, just joined and started jamming, felt real good. And yeah, and then lo and behold, he's your roommate, and all this other stuff is happening. You reach out through him, and yep, small world.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So what was the process of everyone coming together? Because looking at this news article from Maryland Matters, it said that you voted and it was a 2-1 vote in favor of the union, 65 workers voting in favor, 33 opposing it. So what was this process? Because a lot of people have no experience or background in union organizing, have never been in a union. What got people motivated to start wanting to organize?
Well, I think at the base level, it's the type, two things at once. It's the type of work that we do, and specifically for us, the amount of tenure that we have, like the amount of people that have been there multiple years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, lots of folks, including myself. I have 12 years. I hit 12 years this past month, July. And so that in and of itself sets the stage for, I guess, being on the same page and having this thing. You can't rush that kind of history with each other, and then of course aligned with like the nuance of the work that we do. It is just glossed over as retail, but we're so connected to these devices and dependent in a way that we're ignorant to. And so we end up playing the role of whether it's therapist or teacher or rescuer or scapegoat to like funnel people's emotions at because of whatever has happened with this or their relationship with this stuff. Yeah, it's just a lot to bear. And I think what allowed us the time to at least for me, to notice like what had happened, and then what can we do going forward was the COVID break. Apple was, of course, wealthy enough that they weren't going to let us all go, right? So they kept us afloat. We did this weird work from home hybrid and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, that was several months though. And for a lot of us, like myself, it was the most break that we've had. I mean, yes, you get your vacations and you get your like token 2 days off, but we know that 40-day work week is outdated. And these types of topics were already spoken about amongst each other. We've already sort of played with those ideas of, we know that we're playing a part of this. Like as far as like we can get paid more and, we're making billionaires so much money and all this kind of stuff, those ideas. And so, yeah, COVID happened and gave us all a break. And we tried to band together and use our internal platforms to raise our voice. And it just felt like the same pattern of performative, get us together to just talk about all whatever is ailing us. And then but also to not see any action. And so for me also was like just so hard to have decades worth of these roundtables and we talk about our thing and then just nothing happens, or things happen that are just, I can see in hindsight conveniently aligned with they were already going to do anyway. And, Apple's a very smart, they have a lot of resources. And as was mentioned during the anti-union campaign, they've had a long-standing history with Littler Mendelsohn, this advanced union busting law firm that they get preempted with these tactics. And I can see, of course, see all that in hindsight. Like it's like union proofing almost, like to not even get people to question their circumstances enough to think that it could be better, even though when you think about how much we give and how much we get and are still struggling, whether it's debt or just paycheck to paycheck idea, like that those are the things that really have worn on us. And again, when you had the COVID break, you had a little bit of a healing from that happen. And then we have so many examples of decisions being made that absolutely have a direct effect on us, but we're not included in that, process at all. And it's just so many examples of that over and over in this like gaslighting sort of idea of like, oh, we want to hear your feedback, but it's not being integrated, right? And we're seeing it over and over and over, whatever the COVID policies are, whatever kind of thing. Like that just, I think for a lot of us really just made it so like, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again, unless, we quit, which a lot of us did. A lot of people that were original organizers didn't make it because they just couldn't, the job is so brutal, and I guess our current our version of that is, I don't know. I only know that because I've been at Towson for, I think 9 of the 12 years. I spent a couple years at Annapolis because I grew up in Anne Arundel County, but for the most part, I've been at Towson the whole time. So I really only know that world, but it feels like it's, a very hard version maybe, but again, I'm not comparing that to anything else. But yeah, I would say that's what really like, these existing ideas that we're already sort of aligned with, obviously seeing like Amazon, doing something, whether, we only had one of them successful, but all that activity really, and then, the Starbucks stuff. And it's just like, of course, well, why don't we do that kind of thing? Or at least why don't we do it? And so, yeah, that's what kind of kickstarted us looking into it, which I can skip right to that. That was really,
what was it?
well,
Scheduling? Was it scheduling or was it wage?
Oh yeah,
Was it,
scheduling.
what were some of the main issues that kept coming up and again, and the HR department be like, let's have a circle where we can discuss our emotions and say why we're mad and
Well,
never
the
resolve
roundtable
anything.
ideas, the roundtable where we discuss our everything, that has always been there. It's just we know the frequency drastically increased once the union stuff became public, but it had always been in the bedrock of like, whether it's once a year, twice a year, however, we have these internal surveys that we do. And then the store leader will review that in these different group sessions where we can kind of expound more on it and they can give their commitments for what they're going to do to fix whatever it is that the store is talking about. But specifically, I mean, schedule balance is huge. There is no predictable schedule. For me specifically, none of these things, you don't get any more privilege other than a little bit of extra vacation time the longer that you stay there. So there's this idea that we value these, our tenured employees, but that isn't felt in like the control you can get back in your life. So scheduling is huge. Also knowing how profitable Apple is and how difficult it is for us to get the maximum amount of raise possible. I mean, myself personally, I've been trying to gain clarity what I can do to do that. And it just the whole 10-year or over a decade that I've been here, it just has not gotten any more clear. Um, so it's just that's an obvious one too. We just
Yeah.
know the company is so profitable that it's like, yeah, it's just a lot of that. And then like the refusal to acknowledge that we should be getting hazard pay for being frontline workers. And we haven't stopped working in that capacity the entire time that this pandemic's been happening. Um, that's huge. But the schedule part, I think, is the biggest unifier. It's just, there's a lot of factors at play, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's also creates like this call out culture because you're so burned out from having, if you are the one that is there, it's the day becomes so much harder.
Yeah.
Um, so that's all part of it. But also it's because we started really thinking about, well, anything that affects us on the job, we can have a voice to try to alter or change. So there's a lot of like personal, like professional development type stuff where getting promotions or going through the interview process, there isn't a guaranteed way that every single person will be able to practice the way that Apple wants us to be able to interview to get to these newer positions. And it's it's always in this way of, well, you need to ask for it. You need to ask for the time for us to like make this, when it's not, it should be given to everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same amount of time to practice this, to reflect on their past experience. And it's just the exact reverse that it should be, where it's like we should be guaranteed the time, not we should ask for the time and it's on us if we don't get to do it, when there's no way that we can possibly do it with, you know, how the store is laid out and like our days are laid out and that sort of thing. And that's just really challenging and confusing to try to deal with when you're really actually trying to do the best that you can and you keep getting no, but your feedback isn't something that you can integrate into your, it's like an extracurricular thing that is like, how am I supposed to, it's like a school thing too. It's like really weird. So I know that's, we all have our different ways and I guess critiques about what that process has been for us. I have my own, but that was also for me and other people a huge part of why it's just inconsistent and confusing.
Yeah.
So
So as the process began, you're like, okay, we're now like talking amongst each other. That has to be like a pretty scary experience in the sense that you're gonna start. You got a target on your back as soon as management hears that you're
well,
organizing.
so we did it. We were talking underground about this for or not over a year, but about a year before we even went public. So that prospect was for a lot of the time that we've been doing this kind of in the future. And honestly, for even probably myself included, and to a certain degree, like we underestimated what that was going to be like when, you know, they were firing on all cylinders and new, and we were target, because, you know, yeah, it definitely created targets for us, and it definitely continues to this day and makes it an added stressor that is pretty hard to deal with and had broke actually some people um in certain ways. Like I'm not going to out anybody, but it affected all of us in very significant ways, especially the organizers. But yeah, but it's something that we were able to not, probably for a benefit, not overthink too much. And because, you know, it wasn't that much different from us talking about whatever other thing we were complaining about. We were just sort of transforming the conversation to be very intentional about, as we bled the information out intentionally, we started pretty much with like either people that were vocal in like lefty ideas or like people of tenure.
Yeah.
And I think that was the best strategy. And we just slowly but surely just made sure that either we were talking about it in a space where we could talk about any other kind of thing, like non-customer facing or off the clock. And then we just had this specific cadence of seeing if they have any issues with there. And if they have issues, sort of, all right, well, this is what like the idea to get union rights is. And yeah, but so we kind of did the way that we train each other on the job, sort of about this idea, which was kind of funny to, I mean, that's what it felt like when we were doing those early organizing meetings, is like we could have been meeting about anything in the store, like coming up with a plan to make some area of our store better, like we've done so many times, so many of us have done so many times. But no, it was about get, showing the interest to get those rights. I don't
Yeah,
know. It
get
was
that
really
power.
fun.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. See what, at least what that option looks like.
yeah, yeah, and unions can also be, very hard. Democracy's sloppy. Trying to get 51% of people on board. Everyone has their own grievances and their own, issues and things like that they bring to the table. And so, but it does create a democratic workplace, and then the ultimate goal is to have power so that you can at least negotiate the numbers, to leverage the numbers to negotiate with management for things like scheduling and better pay and those type of things. So as this organizing began, what was it like once it became public? Yeah, what was kind of
Oh,
the, and also what who had anyone been involved with organizing with union before, or were they?
absolutely not. No,
And
we
how
were
did
all
you get to name it AppleCore, and how did you meet with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers?
well. This is kind of all adjacent, honestly, to me and my partner's yoga practice, and it's like I wish I didn't have to say that, but it is just an inherent part of this journey for us. Because for us, it was like the whole yoga thing is about us kind of doing the union thing, but with your own life terrain. And so it was very natural to try to extend that idea out to, oh, wow. But anyway, I only bring that up because our mentor, like we practice Ashtanga yoga. There's only one program that does Mysore in Baltimore. And so we had been a part of that community for a while. And one of the teachers, one of our mentors there, Heather, she is like kind of an activist teacher, like person, very involved in just, I don't even want to say more than that, other
Yeah,
than we trust her in that way, I guess politically and socially and all that kind of stuff. And she's definitely an activist, and she basically just got us in contact with David, just because.
awesome.
And I don't know if she was directly involved, because basically our Mysore program was absorbed by Yoga Works during its latter years. Yoga Works eventually got unionized in New York, but there were other campaigns throughout the Yoga Works enterprise before they went bankrupt. So I don't know exactly how she knows. I have to actually ask her, but either way, she got us in contact, and it was my partner Catherine, who also works at Apple, but she happens to work for the Columbia store. It was me, her, and then this guy at my store, KG. So Catherine reached out over email and then ended up calling David just to like, what is a union? What does this even mean? If we were to even try to like, is it against the law for us to, meet up and talk to you, et cetera, et cetera. And so literally taking those kind of baby steps. And then he was like, all right, I'll come down and, we'll chat at whatever, like obligations just to learn about it and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, David has just been like, he's been the best person that we could have asked for to work with
And
about this.
David's
So
the organizer with the
David Dean
Machinists.
Maria, yes, exactly. And so, and he was kind of he does their non-traditional organizing, um, and kind of does like the whole East Coast like, I don't know how south he goes, but he's definitely like this upper right quadrant where like Maryland is and stuff. Um, So anyway, I just mean that like he had an open mind in the way that he allowed us to learn the information the way that we needed to apply it to our first like workplace, and also allowed us to just take as much control as we needed to or wanted to, which we all want to be as involved as we possibly can without, actually burning out from, because it's so much extra work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like a whole other
yeah.
job, whole other unpaid job, and that's so for real. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, so Catherine reached out, we met at this coffee shop. The Columbia just has a different situation there. I won't speak to that, but
Yeah.
me and KG and David, we from there just started, we immediately brought in our friend Christy think was the actual next person from Towson, who we had been talking about all this stuff with, and we were like, hey, we actually reached out to somebody. You want to, get on the Zoom, and then it just built up from there. And we had this whole, I mean, it's, you have to really think about it in like a Survivor. I don't know if you watch Survivor, but it's that social, it's not manipulation, but it's intentional socializing in a way to, like in this case, make the information trickle out to the right people with the right influence that aren't going to go to management. Like, so, and if we, just to say again, I've said it other places, but like the one thing that we really messed up, or one of the things that we could have controlled that we really messed up on, was some of the people that we were afeared of that would go to management. There might have been like 10 or so. And a couple of them had some tenure under their belt. So that's where I'm like, ugh, I was trying to do my best. I could have done more, to make it a priority to get in contact with them before we went public. But
Yeah.
shoot, man, we went public and we missed about 10 of them. And that really just was a thorn in our side. Like even to this day, like
Yeah.
and then it created a lot of just personal stuff in the mix of all this that, that was just such a big poison that, yeah. And then we should have been more on like the moderation, because we had like 65 people in our Signal chat. I don't know if you know about the Signal app, that encrypted app. So like 65 people downloaded this app, got an invite to get into this group. So anyone grew to this point where we didn't moderate it like we probably should have from the beginning.
Yeah.
So there was, some venting in there and some screenshots were taken and all this kind of stuff. And, it just, that part of it sucks.
The messy part of trying to organize people in general,
but also
anywhere.
It's like, exactly. And so it's like, I don't know. It's like, I want to give some compassion that it was the first time that anyone's done this, and no one's perfect, and we got to try to own it. And we have, at least I have since, gone back to all the people that I feel like I could have connected with that I didn't, tried to make amends. And cause it's like we have it now. And so we want their voice. Everyone's going to have a say no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, was there another point that I missed from what you had asked? But
no. So I mean, like going to this next question, which is essentially, there's the National Labor Relations Board, and once you say, hey, we want to do a union vote, like what does that process look like?
Sure.
For other people that may be in situations that they're at least curious on kind of what the process is, the legal process where you say, hey, we want to have a union, we need to do this vote, we need to do a card check type thing.
Yeah. Well, this is what I would say. You want to take it slow and steady, though. It has to be consistent, and you have to find it's never going to work unless you find your core, usually about 10%. We had about 15 people on our organizing committee, about 8 of which were like present in like an everyday sense, but the other ones played a role in a big ways I'll talk about that later. But I guess it's like, how do you have both things in mind at once? Like the expectation to participate in the organizing committee is you have to want to do it and be doing it. But at the same time, it's like life shit comes up, and, not everybody can participate in the same way for the same duration. Like even myself, I got COVID and I was out for like freaking December to like through February. It wasn't until like March or something that I started actually coming back to meetings and stuff. But the movement kept coming, and actually we got more people during that time and kind of kicked up a momentum wave. So I don't know. It can't just be one person. It can't just be 2 people. So, I mean, you can't do it. But if you have that group, then it's really about how do you learn the information, and what is the best way that your team learns that information of what it is? What are these union rights, right? The right to information, the right to transparency, so that you can negotiate the things that affect you. And then it's about really thinking creative. I mean, at least for me, it was, so now I know what these union rights are. I'm living my work life out, thinking about, whoa, the things that affect me on the store level, how can I influence that? Like, what could that even look like? And then that's a way to just start inspiring yourself. Cause if you aren't, you got to dig in that well to get, cause they don't want you to access these rights. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. And if we can, and that's, I guess, also just to speak on like the Atlanta, because we were like just They went public just a little bit before us. And then we were like, oh, wait, no, we're doing it too. And
Yeah.
that actually we probably
So
rushed a little bit
yeah,
because of that.
explain that. What other store? Like another store went public?
Yeah. So it
Yeah,
was the Atlanta store. I forgot what the actual name of the store is called, but they were working with the CWA. They went public like
which is
end of
Communication
May.
Workers of America for
Yep.
those folks who don't know.
Communications Workers of America. Yep. And then yeah, they went public like end of May. We went public like second week of June or something like that. But yeah, excuse me, they were just a little bit of a head start. So their anti-union stuff from Apple started, a couple weeks before ours. And excuse me, they and I don't know if it was from their store, but then like the Vice leaked memos came out where there was like some manager in one of these anti-union calls, like wrote down everything that was going on. I mean, that was a huge help to like know really like the angle that, and it was that plus a lot of the messy emotional stuff for us. So I mean, you can have a heads up, but still living it is hard. But yeah, no, that helped us so much, like having just that little bit of a heads up. And they were so brutal down there in the red state of Georgia, like that they couldn't even make it. And I'm not surprised because there were points at our campaign where I'm like, is this going to work? Even
Yeah.
though we still won by a solid majority, but it's just really hard. So anyway, the whole process, you got to get your showing of interest. So your
What
showing
does
of
that mean?
interest,
Yeah.
like it's the old school union card. So nowadays it's, at least for us, it was a link. So we just called it the link. Hey, you need to sign the link. If you're about, so we would have those conversations. Like I mentioned, like once you got your core group, you go out and you have your conversations of like, in what order, like, do you have issues? And slowly but surely, like if they have that and you position the union thing and they seem like some people want to do a little research, hop on a Zoom call or something like that. But then eventually they sign that link. And when you get, so the government threshold is 30%. I would recommend at least 60%, even 80%, before going public, just because of how hard it is, like straight up. And we were, I think, maybe a little bit too full of ourselves because we had, 73% or when we went public. I could say that now because we've already won, but it was
Yeah.
kind of secret, like how much support we had.
Yeah.
But because like a lot of people didn't want to say it because we were being targeted, like us
Yeah.
that were in the
Yeah.
articles. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
But also the ones that weren't known because the management didn't know what side they were on. They also got targeted in the other way because
Wow.
so when you get your showing of interest, whenever threshold, and the union person can advise. Again, I'm recommending 70 to 80% or whatever. But then you submit all those written names to the labor board, and then they say, okay, you hit them. They just want to know you're above 30.
Yeah.
You want to know that you will win. Probably. But yeah, then they're like, all right, well, we'll set a date. And then the lawyers between the two, for us, it's the Machinists. For, Apple, it's Littler Mendelsohn, but then they were figuring out, they'll go back and forth what the dates are and all that stuff. And yeah, then they set a date and you just have to win the majority. Obviously you want to win it by a good amount. So you have good momentum going into negotiations, because the other leg to all this, after you get your union rights, it doesn't matter until you get a contract.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to get to next. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we're at right now. Yeah, we have
And
our bargaining committee
yeah.
elected, so we self-elected all that, and it was about 13 of us. We're just trying to get Apple to agree to the dates so that we can go. It's like a 3-day intensive training that the 13 of us will go through. The machinist hosts and pay for our shifts if we miss shifts. But basically just get us educated to sit at the table for negotiations, which is what we've said all along. We will be at the table,
Yeah.
or your elected representatives from the store level will be at the table articulating our needs. So that's really important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, the concern I've heard from the Amazon Workers Union up in New York is that they won the union and now they have to deal with, excuse my language, all the fuckery that Amazon legal is going to do to try to prevent them from ever actually signing a contract. And I'm sure Apple is also looking at any type of legal maneuver they can do to try to delay and slow it down. But maybe not. I'm curious. Like, is it
Well,
moving
I guess,
forward? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to tell right now,
Yeah.
honestly. It's because at the end of the day, even if Apple's going to be more like liberal or lenient than Amazon's brutal ass will be, I still don't think they're going to like actually push it along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, because from what I can see, it's like they're not doing anything to like help create this for us to get our bargaining committee up and running. So we can basically, the first thing on that we have to figure out is like they just updated the COVID policy, or like the return quarantine close contact policy, like 10 or 12 days after we got certified, and they tried to roll it out like normal. And we had to be like, hey, actually, this affects us. We're going to have to negotiate about this, even if we're going to agree to it probably anyway. It's like just the fact that this is something that, again, it's just like one of these times where we can do it. So they've agreed that we're going to negotiate about it, but now we're still waiting to hear on these dates to get ourselves trained. So it's like,
Yeah.
it could go either way still. But yeah, that's the first thing we're trying to figure out. Like, are they going to go somewhat like they want to get this rolling at all? Because they could just want to get it out of the way so they match the changes to the rest of the company, and try to union proof again.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause it seems like the way they're talking about Towson is that we're like an outlier store and we had really bad management, which may have been a part of it, but just I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all that. Are you in touch? Has other stores been in touch with your union about potentially unionizing other Apple stores?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We have a Slack channel started for there's stores from South all the way West Coast. I don't know what to say any specific areas.
Yeah.
I don't want
Don't.
to try to out them, but yeah, a good amount of folks like in our AppleCORE specific chat. And then if you, I don't know if you've already joined the Discord, the Apple Meet 2 or Apple 2 Discord.
No.
It was started by the folks in the corporate, like when they were doing all the corporate pay transparency stuff in like 2020. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
It
No.
was
I'll
actually
put it in the show notes. For sure.
Shar something. I forget her name, but she was actually fired for this because she like spearheaded it. But anyway, there's a Discord set up on that behalf. But there's a lot of union stuff happening there. Just talks about it and that sort of thing. And some of us follow, but people reach out to us on our Instagram account. And I think for a while we were really doing a good job about like staying connected with the other store or like whatever's happening. Cause the Machinists are also in contact with a bunch of other ones. So
Okay.
they've like coordinated so we can jump on, like they've asked us to jump on and help in certain ways. So that's happened a few times, but it's also like, at least for me too, like I haven't got to the space where I feel like I can even like give anything helpful because it's just been so absolutely brutal, in ways that are just it's like I feel like I'm a pretty good visionary and I could see that, oh yeah, it's going to be brutal, but it's like, it doesn't matter how you can see it when you're living it. It is just
Yeah.
next level. Cause we had our store leader, he was here for 5 years. He was a favorite of the store. I mean, everybody loved our store leader. I guess I shouldn't say his name, but
You can
I
just
shouldn't.
store leaders fine.
But he got it's unclear if they kind of pushed him out or it was like voluntary. It's like I don't know. I can't tell because I know that the anti-union stuff seemed to really kill him. So they recruited. Let me just talk about that real quick because
Yeah.
if any Apple people are listening to this, and I know that there's a lot of different campaigns at different points, and if anyone's at a point where they feel like it might be public soon or anything like that, like the what they did for us, they got us a new store leader. They pulled him in like he was just supporting, but he was recruited because he was so good operationally at the existing procedures because they can't change anything once you declare the union as the thing that you're going for. They cannot make changes, but they can go all in on what it used to be or what it has been, even if your store, like mine, hadn't ever adhered to what it had been.
Yeah.
So they recruited this new store leader to come in. This store leader, seriously, he had like 5 people, other managers under him from other stores that he had mentored. So it was like his super team that he had also recruited to bring in. That recruited management team boxed out our managers. Like, so the recruited ones came in, they did the day-to-day stuff. They were on the floor. I worked with all of them because I was stuck on the floor of And then what Apple did is they hosted 3 roundtables a day that were voluntary, but they were very sneaky in the way they signed people up, because it's like you could say that you didn't want to go, but like people didn't even know what it was about. They were just like pulling people left and right kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they had these group roundtables, 3 a day. As many people as they could fit safely in a room, they would pull. So they would gut the floor. I mean, it was fucked on the floor. 3
Wow.
a day for the 7 weeks of the
Jeez.
union election.
Wow.
3 a day. And this is where I mentioned that the people that maybe weren't as present in the earlier parts of the organizing committee showed their colors here. They showed up to the fucking battlegrounds because that was what it was, man.
Yeah.
It's just, and then on top of the 3 public ones a day, the other managers, the ones that had their time boxed out by the recruited ones, would do targeted one-on-one talks that they were basically temperature checking the employees, fishing them to see if they'll talk about, because if the employee initiates the union talk, the managers can give their opinions which are solicited from Littler Mendelsohn. And so, and certain managers really made it their mission to scare people, shake them up, use whatever kind of, my husband was in a union, my dad, my uncle, whatever example, they would force them to pull from there and then go all in, whatever that storyline is, to scare people. And that's why it went from like I said, the 10 people that we missed to the 33, because it was so intense.
Yeah.
And if you really didn't do your homework and your inner, like, what does this mean in my mind, like union rights, using them, engaging in a democratic workplace, you had no foundation. You were going to get totally swayed with whatever the current of the emotions were, which was freaking turbulent.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah,
trying to
that's what it was.
inoculate the workers who are going to be going through these psychological operations, to inoculate them from the anti-union campaign is,
Yep.
it's it's intense.
Yeah, so that's what it looked like. It was 7 weeks of that, and then that's when we were trying to do that last interview. It was like I think it was 4 or 5 days before the vote or something like that. So
too
again,
much.
I apologize for all that
it's
stuff.
all good. It's all good. I'm glad we've been able to connect, and that you've really shared a very exclusive story that I want to share far and wide within the Labor Radio Podcast Network, and possibly other Apple stores that may be looking at this.
Well, I hope it's helpful, because honestly, it's the more that it becomes normalized, workers noticing that at least an option, just like if you want a lawyer present when you're on trial, right? You have to ask for that. Same with this. It's like you have to ask for, and just real quick to speak to, because this is one thing that I've learned that is, just further radicalized me kind of against how our current laws are set up. I mean, the reason it's so hard for us in America is because of our laws. We want to say that we're for the workers and for unions or whatever. No, we're not. We're a country that literally provides space. If you in Canada, UK, Glasgow, Scotland, they just won their union during our campaign, because when they give their showing of interest, the government says you get it. They don't say the company gets extra space to misinform or to scare or whatever it is. We do that. We literally do that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of an extra election after you send your majority written links, whatever, cards, whatever. If you say that you want it, you should get it. Just like these other, so that for me has been a big, whoa, that is a huge issue. Bigger than, that's the reason that we had to go through this. And all these political people, Bernie Sanders giving us a tweet, that means nothing to me, because where were they when this was happening? Where are they speaking out against these laws?
Yeah, and changing them.
Doesn't mean anything to me. Just getting the old Biden handshake or whatever the hell. So I guess we'll see how it goes. But I just wanted to mention that part, because, literally learning about Glasgow just got it. And they didn't even have to do what we did. That happened during we're going through this battle.
Yeah.
It's the same company too. Because that was an Apple store. Sorry, I didn't mention that. But.
Yeah. So how can people learn more about this struggle and support your union?
Well, the support for ours is easy. Let me just remember what the Instagram is, but easy is just follow us on Instagram. Just in any way, was it AppleCORE Union? AppleCORE Union at Instagram. And I would say reach out to us there. if you reach out to us there, if you want to get onto, like, if you're an Apple person specifically and you're trying to get in contact with us, or you want to talk with the Machinists, or you want to just get on our across store Slack or anything like that. I mean, we will verify you in Apple Directory, so we don't want any spies. But yeah, no, we are here to help anybody in how we can. I mean, like I said, it's still hard for us right now, and all those managers that were supporting us have left, and we're back to our bare bones store. Honestly, it feels like a little bit of a time loop, because it's the same issues that, for me specifically, created this need to want these rights are still manifesting in the store, right? Like, we haven't really changed it in that way yet. So, but yeah, the more that people just vocalize it, make it depoliticize it, because it's not about that. It's about, if there is a chance to utilize these rights to create better conditions, and don't worry about the dues part of it, because you'll get to see the contract and do the math. If the dues are worth it, sign the contract, right? If they aren't, you don't have to sign for it. As long as everyone, all the workers, are on the same page. I mean, our union said that if we didn't want it after the first contract, they wouldn't even make us vote again. They would just walk away. So it's literally not what. Don't go to your managers for information about it. That's, I guess, all I would say.
Billy Jarboe, he is with the Apple Coalition of Organized Retail Employees, known as AppleCORE. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thanks, Evan.